Everything ties together in this moment. Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. We are going to jump right into a fully spoilery review of Kaiju number 8, chapter 108, where Matsumoto's brilliant writing skill is on full display. We all know the rule of Chekhov's gun, that when you are writing a story, everything that you see in the story must serve a purpose. In the classic example, if you open a play with a gun over the mantelpiece, that gun must be fired by Act 3. We also know the dreaded trope of bad writing, the deus ex machina, the god from the machine, where the creator writes himself into a corner, and in order to solve the situation, he must bring in something completely out of left field, a power or skill that was never mentioned before to save the situation. As creators, we strive to follow the rule of Chekhov's gun, ruthlessly editing out the guns that we will never fire from our story. And what is even harder, striving to make sure we can think far enough ahead to introduce the things we need, or going back and rereading to find something we already introduced to solve the situations our characters find themselves in. Someone on Reddit recently asked, why is such a simple, predictable story so good? This is why Matsumoto follows the rules of writing. Now, it is time to get into the spoilers, so I will give you a chance to click away by telling you to go check out the links below the video to get yourself a copy of one of my books. Humans Are Weird, Let's Work It Out, Short, Absurd Science Fiction Stories. Everything that happens in this fight is a result of either the character's established internal motivations or elements of the universe that were introduced very early in the series. The very first flashback we ever saw of Kafka's backstory was of him and Mina studying kaiju slang together in that library. They are promising to stand by each other's side, and this has been the goal from the beginning. These latest chapters, with our view of the young, terrified Mina applying to the Defense Force and having the weight of an entire country dropped on her shoulders before she's 20, makes that far more of a selfless motivation on Kafka's part. It isn't that he wants to be by her side for his own sake, it's that he wants her to know that he has her back, that someone has her back. And we've seen pretty clearly she desperately needs that. When Kafka was fleeing the hospital with Reno, we saw that he can sense the identities of Kaiju when he is transformed. This was later developed when we faced down the Director General for the first time. We saw how this sense could be an overwhelming force for Kafka when his opponent is very powerful. When Kafka and Reno rescued that little girl and her mom, we see how Kafka relies on Reno to do the things that he can't do when he's transformed. This was reiterated in the attack on Tachikawa Base, when Reno kind of has to remind him, but Kafka steps down and let Reno do his thing. From the first real battles in the application arc, we see how Kafka shines in a support position, helping others achieve their goals. And this is driven home again when he discovered the reproductive organs on the little fungal kaiju, and again when he identified the presence of kaiju number 10 from just the wyvern's kaiju's behavior. After losing the Director General, we saw how the kaiju flesh was slowly taking over his body, and it was driven home how if he kept fighting, eventually he wouldn't be able to transform. During the fight with Vice Captain Hoshino, we saw his core, and during his fight with the Director General, we saw that number 8 can literally lose his entire body and regenerate as long as his core is intact. Every element of this scene is built from things that have come to before. Kafka throwing everything into supporting Mina. Kaiju number 9 just zeroing in on tracking down his core. However, there are two elements that are far and away my favorites. The first is just how cheesy and dramatic Kafka is. It is child Mina herself who, in that very first flashback we see, is the first to comment on it, laughing at him with good-humored delight and playfully mocking his words. She said he talked like a manga character, and he fussed and told her not to tell either of their moms. We see that impulsive, dramatic speech crop out again and again. The multiple times he declares his loyalty to Mina and gets 50 push-ups assigned just for being cringe while in uniform. When he can't even lift his heavy long gun and boldly declares to Reno that only those of us who know what 0% is understand the weight of the weapons. And Reno rightly yells at him to stop making it trying to sound cool. Kafka is not James Bond. He's not the kind of cool, suave guy who instinctively knows the right thing to say in any situation. He's just some kid who grew up on manga and cheesy hero movies and who has no social fear to stop him from trying to seem cool. He fails a lot, but he never lets that stop him. He always swings. So, in the dire situation, when he is on the very ragged edge of death, when Kaiju number 9 is doing the one thing that is able to kill him, when Kafka has already been transformed for far, far too long, and the threat of being trapped in this body forever is closing, as the powerful hand of his enemy is crushing his core, of course, it's only logical, it is only consistent with his character that Kafka spouts off a cheesy heroic line, full of pluck, full of laughter, full of humility. Because Kafka's a grown man now. He knows exactly how corny that line sounds. But he doesn't care one bit. It's a good dad joke type line, and dadgummit, he's gonna use it. Which, of course, brings us to the other of my two favorite elements of this scene. Kafka's goal from the get-go was to stand by Mina's side. When it first starts, the goal was vague and unclear, and it was Vice Captain Hoshina who really clarified what that meant when he demanded to know if Kafka was gunning for his job, and Kafka manned up and said yes. Yes, he was. Then, jump forward a story arc or two, and we see what that entails, what that job entails when Kaiju number 10 attacks Tachikawa Base. Vice Captain Hoshina gave everything he had, and then some, fighting Kaiju number 10. And he knew for the most of the fight that he couldn't defeat this giant monster, but that didn't matter because Vice Captain Hoshina knew that he didn't have to. His job, his place, the one that Kafka is gunning for, was to hand the baton to Captain Mina Ashiro, the woman who hits with the power of a battleship. So, here Kafka is, his childhood dream finally realized. He is standing by Mina's side, and it turns out, unsurprisingly, that Kaiju number 8 can't defeat Kaiju number 9. Not on his own, at least. Not utterly overwhelmed by the sense of Kaiju number 9 and Kaiju number 2 bearing down on his senses together. Not after having his body ripped apart again and again and again. But Kafka just grins up at Kaiju number 9 and gives out this utterly childish, very shonen manga line. No, not yet, number 9, because I've got the ultimate childhood friend. And Captain Mina Ashiro, the human battleship, steps in, guns blazing, and blasts off the arm that Kaiju number 9 is using to crush Kaiju number 8's core. And then Mina, with a grin on her face, responds to Kafka with a cheesy line of her own. Because you know what? She's old enough to start using dad jokes too. So, Kafka has achieved his goal, probably at the cost of his human body. This one body of Kaiju number 9 should be defeated pretty soon, but what does that even mean? There is no chance that this is Kaiju number 9's only body. There is still the question of who that ghost was at the shrine. There's a dozen plot threads still out in the story that need to be tied up. The story doesn't even appear to be close to halfway done. And yet, Matsumoto has fulfilled Kafka's childhood dream. But like most of our dreams, we reach that mountain peak. For me, it was the first time I got to wear a national park uniform, and we stare up in astonishment. Yes, maybe this dream is even everything we dreamed it was. And there is so much more. Each mountain we climb shows us another mountain over its shoulder. The manga isn't ending anytime soon. But what do you think, my wonderful viewers? What is happening in the next chapter? Will we see the end of this body of Kaiju number 9's? Or will it slink off to lick its wounds and recuperate? Personally, I think it's going to be the second option. I don't think that having Kaiju number 9 lose everything he's gained in this body would be good from a story perspective. But tell me what you think in the comments below that video. Hit that like and subscribe button, and peace out, my wonderful viewers.
Drake McCarty's leg was shattered, deep in the wilderness. As the flash flood closed over him, something alien pulled him from the waters. A military base that shouldn't exist. An ancient warrior with secrets of his own. Drake returns to his family with a whole leg and the burden of a secret he doesn't understand. In the forest around them, someone is watching, and something followed him home. Flying Sparks. 90,000 words of science fantasy adventure. The first novel in the Dying Embers universe is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and from the author as a signed copy. Get your copy now and step into a world where dragons walk the forest, aliens lurk on the mountain, and things go boomp in the night.
Escape into another world with the writings of author Betty Adams. Two worlds, one of utter absurdity, one of dramatic tension, both alike in aliens absolutely astounded by human behavior. Humans are weird, short, absurd science fiction stories. Flying sparks, dragons, aliens, and things that go boom in the night.
Books available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and at authorBettyAdams.com for a signed copy.